Hey there, Internet. I'm screen actor Sam Lakowski, and you're watching Pretentious Opinions. Hi, Claire. Before, Before we go any further, could you please confirm for the record that you are indeed over the age of 18, you are a legal citizen of these United States, that you are of sound mind and body, and can therefore give me your informed consent to record and post this entire conversation for free on the internet? Simple yes or no.
Yes.
All right. Well, welcome to the show. Thank you very much. It's a show, but it's my show. So.
At least you're honest about it.
Oh yeah, no, this is not quality. This is just me making clickbait. So,
Okay.
all right. So, let's start off by having you introduce yourself. Just tell me who you are and everything else you want to tell me. Tell our viewers about you.
Okay. My name is Claire. I know Sam from back in Maryland. I think the grand scheme, I want to be a production designer, but right now I'm quite happy doing props and wardrobe. I live in LA. I'm out here in Hollywood, and that's sort of taken over my life.
We both studied and graduated from Towson University, and I studied theater, but what did you study there?
I studied theatrical production and design with a concentration in scenic design, but I spent a lot of times in the prop department.
And you've stayed active doing that. You said you did props professionally now. So, can you tell?
When I was back in Baltimore, I worked with a bunch of small underground theaters doing props professionally. I actually got paid for it. Not a lot, but I got a little
But you got paid.
But while I was at Towson, I had a lot of friends who did film, so I got really involved with the film students and helping them do production design for their little mini films, so that when they turned their dorm rooms into interrogation rooms, they didn't look as terrible as they could have. And then that sort of just got me, one thing led to another, and I spent one season on the TV show Veep, the HBO show, in the prop department, and that was sort of life-changing. And so now I'm out here doing it.
Are you a union worker? Are you still working on that? What's up with that?
No, I'm not in the union. I've heard that on average it takes about 5 years for someone to get into one of the unions, unless you are related to somebody, or you know somebody, or you're so good at something that they can't not have you in the union. And the process to get in is a little bit of a catch-22. So I'm still trying to work that out and figure out how to get my foot in that door. So everything I've been doing now has been non-union work.
Except for Veep. That was a union production, right? Well, HBO.
Yes, Veep was a union show. I've worked on some union stuff as a production assistant. And there's not a union for production assistants because there's just so many of us. Production assistant is the one job on a union production that you do without being in a union. And technically, when I was working on Veep, I was a production assistant hired for specifically the prop department. So I wasn't technically a prop person, but I learned a lot, and I got a lot of experience.
Okay, so you've also performed on stage and on camera as an actor. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
So part of every theater program is that no matter what you're specializing in, you have to have tried everything else at least once so that you can understand and appreciate what everybody else is doing. So I started taking acting classes in college, and I really, really loved it. And I was actually seriously considering trying to double track in acting and production. But I was a transfer student, and it would have held me back a couple years if I had tried to do both, which I ended up spending a couple extra years anyway, so I could have done it. But I was told that being a transfer student, it would have been really, really hard for me to do both. So I picked production over acting, but I would still act whenever I could in friends' films or in little play festivals that we'd have at school. And I was in a couple of productions as an actress at Anne Arundel Community College when I went there for a couple years. So I've gotten a taste of what it's like to be an actress and the kind of crazy demands that has on people. And I think that having acted before makes me a better designer and a better prop person and a better set designer, because when I'm thinking about props and sets, I'm thinking about, as an actor, it would be so much fun to be able to do this. Or in this moment, if I was feeling this way, I would want to do something like this, and it sort of informs, what kind of props I pick out or what kind of seating arrangements or different levels. Like, I don't know. I think I'm still a little bit of an actress at heart, but I don't have the stomach and the patience and the determination to try and make it as a professional, and I bow down to the people who do.
You don't need to bow down to us. We are shameless self-promoters, and we are attention whores. So, yeah, if you don't love it, I can understand, because it's mostly rejection. Most of your life is you auditioning and being told no. So if you can't handle that, I get that. And if you like doing something else more, you probably have a better chance of making money. So you're actually smarter. All right, well, let's talk a little bit more about why we're here. So in the indie production Blood for Gold, you play a prostitute character who gets sexually assaulted by my character. Was that cannot be an easy part to accept?
I'm actually not gonna lie, it wasn't that hard. But I think it was because of who I was working with. I know you, and I trust you, and I think that made taking the part much, much easier. And, part of acting is pushing yourself to certain limits that you would never normally go to, or that you've never experienced and never want to necessarily experience in real life. That came out really weird. It's not like anyone wants to experience being sexually assaulted. But it's...
No. No.
But part of acting is exploring life a little more in depth. And I probably would have freaked out about it a little bit more, or maybe not even considered doing it, if I hadn't known you, if I hadn't known other members of the crew, if I hadn't felt comfortable doing it. And there's also a little bit of the wizard behind the curtain when it comes to filmmaking. Yes, you have to really push yourself to get to a certain point so it looks good on camera, but what people don't realize is that there's someone just out of frame who's doing something totally ridiculous that you don't necessarily go down the deep dark hole, Someone trying to hold your skirt so that they don't trip the sound guy, or the sound guy balancing precariously on a crate next to you so that he can get the boom where it needs to go without it coming into frame. Being on a film set is just so ridiculous. that I think it creates a little bit of a barrier between what you're doing and how far you actually go down the rabbit hole emotionally and psychologically, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. And I know it's been a few years since we shot Blood for Gold, but when I originally approached you first and said something like, hey, casting's looking for someone for this project, do you remember feeling offended? Because some actresses might feel offended by, hey, I want you to play a prostitute, and I want you to play a prostitute that's going to be sexually assaulted on camera.
I was not offended, because she was an entire character. When you look at job postings, and all it is like a blonde with bra size who just stands in the corner, that's kind of offensive. But, like, you came to me with a whole character, with a whole story arc, with a reason for being there, and I knew you, and I trusted you. I think that's part of why I was so on board with the project in the first place. But no, I wasn't offended.
Great job.
Now, I remember that for this particular production, everything was storyboarded for our scene. We knew exactly what was going to be seen on screen in the final edit. Now, for me, that made me feel more comfortable. Did that make you feel more comfortable too by doing the scene?
Yeah. I think that there's, specifically with that kind of subject matter and the, like, physical requirements of the scene, it made me a lot more comfortable knowing exactly what was going to be shot and exactly what I had to do.
Or didn't have to do.
So that's sort of like one less thing to think about, and it also gives you a really good idea of what it's going to look like at the end, because I've worked with directors who say one thing, and then when it comes to the moment, they ask you to do something completely different, and whatever agreement you had with them is then broken, and your trust with them and with the other people on set is gone. Knowing exactly what was expected of me and expected of you and expected of every other member of the crew made it a lot more comfortable. I worked on a play once in college where my character had to be naked, like fully top to bottom naked, and the director and the scenic designer came to us ahead of time during the auditions and explained what it was going to look like, and explained what the expectations were. And I was like, you know what, I'm on board. It's not like I'm going to be doing a spread eagle in front of the audience, and like there's going to be set pieces in between, and no one's really going to see me be naked, and blah blah blah, and it's going to be great. And then so much had changed between the auditions when I agreed to do it and when the show actually went up opening night, especially during that tech week, I realized how much had changed, and my taking a bath behind like 3 different set pieces ended up me taking a bath and getting undressed like down front and center of the audience in like blindingly bright lights. But like as an actress, if you sign on to do something like that, you can't say, never mind, you're screwed without me. And it's sort of a contract, like they didn't really hold up their end of the bargain, but you have to because you agreed to, and you can't really be a diva about it. But yeah, when something particularly emotionally dangerous and like fraught with issues as the scene was. Having it storyboarded and knowing exactly what everybody was expecting from beginning to end was really comforting.
Good. And if ever you're on a union production and somebody tries to get you to do something, I know from talking to union reps, report that and don't do it. I mean, non-union is kind of, unfortunately, this ether of, well, there's not much we can do to enforce things if you agree to something, but with union productions, I can promise you, if they tried to pull that on you, don't stand for it. Just a little FYI about that. But I do thank you for taking them apart. Let me, and you actually kind of hit on this. Let me back up and give some context to the audience, the viewers who are watching. They might not be aware of this. But in scenes like this, like the one in Blood for Gold, scenes with this very specific kind of simulated violence, these scenes are always heavily rehearsed on set. Every position is agreed upon ahead of time. Every action has to be approved of by the actor portraying the victim character. And these kinds of scenes are also supervised. There are literally ladies on set, chaperones, who stand off camera and make sure that none of the actors are taking advantage of the situation. Now, we had 2 lady chaperones on set the day we shot our scene. Did that help you? Did that make you feel safer, easier?
Yes, it does. Not that I didn't in any way distrust the male crew members, but it was really nice, like, particularly with my costume, I couldn't get in and out of it on my own.
Corsets.
So having women on set to help me get in and out was great, but it was also like having your tribe around you, I guess, and knowing that like their sole purpose for those couple of moments during that scene was just to worry about me and just to make sure that things didn't like pop out, or just like, I don't know, having, particularly being in such a vulnerable state during a scene like that, knowing that there is someone who is solely on your side makes things a lot easier.
Good. Well, that's what they're there for. So I'm glad that I'm glad that the chaperones were effective. Otherwise, what's the point of having them on set? And just to clarify for some of our viewers who need it really spelled out, there is no actual sex taking place. I mean, this is not pornography. Pornography is a separate union, so you never, whether it's a love scene or a scene like this, you never are having actual sex on camera.
No. I've heard...
Same.
After being in Hollywood, and I think it's a lot of people just talking, but like sometimes you'll hear a story about like 2 co-stars who are just super comfortable with each other, and like things do kind of happen, but those are just rumors, and it does not really happen, I hope.
If it does happen, the union certainly is like, what are you doing? So yeah.
No, it's all completely fake, and a lot of times there is so much else going on, like, between the 2 people that you have no idea because it's movie magic, but, like, there's always some kind of a barrier between one actor and another. Or it's completely fake. Makeup artist has built a couple of prosthetics, so what you're actually looking at is not human flesh.
Antichrist.
A couple of those people.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, well, let me ask you this. This is actually probably more insightful. And again, you've touched on it a little bit, but instead of just talking about how it felt while you were shooting the scene itself, which I want to know how you felt doing that, but also how did it feel in between the takes, like when you're waiting?
It's weird and bizarre, but it's also just so goofy because, like, literally just out of frame there are the chaperones holding the giant. It was very cold that day. It was very cold that day.
And it was daytime. It was shot day for night, so it actually is daytime. They made it look like nighttime later.
Yeah, very cold. They had this, like, amazing giant wool coat or cape type thing that they would just, like, throw over my shoulders as soon as we yelled cut. Like I said before, film sets are just so bizarre, and there are so many other people around. Like, when you do a very sensitive scene, they cut, you know, the crew number down as bare bones as they possibly can to make everyone feel more comfortable. But that still means that there's, like, a camera guy and a sound guy and a director, and there's probably someone there for lighting just in case, you know, something needs to get fixed. So the people are still there, and inevitably, when someone is uncomfortable, they laugh.
I just did it.
So there are all kinds of giggles going on at the same time, and it looks like a very intense scene, but, like, I smacked you in the face one time by accident. Like, you got hurt in that scene more than I did. So, like, as soon as they say cut, like, we all turn to you and make sure you're okay, and, like, there's a lot of extra work to, like, get yourself prepared to be back in the scene after all of the crazy on-set stuff happens in between the shots. I don't even remember the beginning of this question.
I just was wondering what it was like for you to not only be performing the scene, but also in between each take. I mean, there's a lot of hurry up, do it, and then wait forever.
Yes, the hurry up and wait is a huge part of any sort of film production. Particularly, like, if we've rehearsed it, we've done it once, we get in there, and then we do, like, a wide shot, and, you know, I'm kicking and screaming, and you're picking me up and throwing me all over the place, and then the next shot is, like, a tight shot, and then all of the, like, this kind of stuff has to become this. And making those adjustments is just kind of, like, it's weird, but it also takes, like, a lot of mental effort, which I think is another part of acting that people maybe don't understand, is that, like, in theater acting, you want to go big, but you can also go from, like, the beginning of the scene to the end of the scene, and whatever happens is what the audience sees. But in film acting, you have so many different angles and different shots and wide shots and close shots, and now I can't remember the actual technical names of any of these shots.
Close up, medium, wide,
yes,
single, two shot. You're the film person, not me.
Not only do you have to, like, stay there mentally, but there always has to be a part of your brain that is, like, thinking about everything technically, and it sort of lives outside of your body, and it's like, okay, if that's where the camera is, then this is what they're seeing, and don't do that, you're out of frame now, and it's just...
Dude, hitting your marks is the most annoying thing.
I think the thing that I had the biggest trouble with was I wanted to scream my bloody head off. And, like, you did a great job of, like, muffling my voice and stuff, but we went through, like, 4 or 5 takes before the sound guy was like, you really need to shut up, because I'm losing his line.
It's because you were clipping.
And then it was just like, oh, right, I have to be aware of everything else going on set. So there's, I think that stuff like that, all of the other extra technical parts of acting helped remind me that this wasn't actually happening to me. And I was surprisingly comfortable doing the scene. And, like, it brings up a lot of emotional baggage. We're about to go super deep and philosophical and personal. I think a lot of women, even more so than they're willing to admit, have been through some kind of sexual assault situation. And it's not always necessarily like a guy jumps up behind you and covers your mouth and drags you in an alley and like sexually assaults you. But every girl at some point has been in some kind of situation that they realize that they don't want to be in. And like a little bit of that was brought up for me. But the people that I was with made it a lot easier, and the craziness of being on an actual film set, and like you can remove yourself from that situation. Like you can bring up all of the emotions and you can remember what it was like, but then you can like disassociate yourself from it.
Well, I'm glad nothing happened to you like that. I would have felt horrible if I'd found that out that had happened and I had been the one who'd been like, hey, let's do this thing together. There's a casting director and they want to put you in. Anyway, okay. So I guess, is it safe to say, well, let me ask you, let me not lead you, let me ask you. Were you comfortable working with me on camera? You just made me like, what?
No, I've worked on other stuff with you before. Yeah. I think you went out of your way to make sure that I was as comfortable as possible. And so I was very comfortable. I think if I hadn't known you, if you had been a complete stranger, it might have been weirder. Like, hands did go in other places. Like, it's not all fake.
Well, you can't. What is it, like kissing and groping? That will happen. You can't. I mean, unless we CGI it, there's not much we can do to simulate that.
Yeah. And I've never shown up on set and had a scene with a complete stranger before that I had never at least like done a table read with or gone through some kind of a rehearsal with. And I had known you before this project, so like. I think that kind of stuff was much easier because we already had a rapport and I knew your girlfriend and she's super cool and, you know.
Yeah, I made a point that if I ever have to do any kind of intimacy on camera, I've always tried to get them to meet my significant other. So I go, look, that's who I'm interested in. No offense to you, but this is a job, so let's do our job, but let's only do our job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't regret any of it, or do you regret any of it? What?
I mean, I think that there's always a part of you as an actor that like goes back to a performance and is like, man, I could have done that better. But like working on the project altogether, no, okay. No, I don't regret it.
I was gonna say, Claire, you sell the scene. I'm just reacting to you freaking out. I don't really have to do much except for go, okay, well, here's my line.
But I am reacting to you being such a creeper.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think that you can, like, sit down and watch a scene and be like, all of this belongs to that single person, unless there's only one person in the scene. Because, I don't know, to be a good actor, you have to be aware of your surroundings and the other people acting in the scene with you. Because even if you're the only person driving the scene forward with, like, dialogue or emotion, the people around you are still, like, you still have to acknowledge that they're there and that they're reacting to you, and then you have to react to them reacting to you, and it's just this big old cycle of people reacting to each other.
I want to switch gears. When I ask you a little bit about you, I want to know what you're doing in 2016, what you're working on right now. Please plug away.
Okay. I am in LA trying to do the whole big Hollywood thing, which is a lot harder than people make it out to be. I've been doing a lot of like office PA jobs. I read this kind of terrifying statistic, but most of the stuff produced in Los Angeles now is reality TV based. or documentary. A lot of the actual filming of TV shows and movies are traveling around the country, or they're going to Vancouver or Toronto or out of the country.
Tax incentives.
And then people are still traveling from LA. Like, all of the actors still live here, and all of the producers still live here, and a lot of the designers still live here, but like the actual crew, the actual workers are coming more from local places. So like when House of Cards films in Maryland, most of the actual like crew comes from Maryland or Virginia or Pennsylvania or the sort of East Coast. So most of the like grunt work, the PA work that happens here in LA is reality based, which I kind of dislike. And most of that PA work ends up being office PA work. But I am still doing short films and indie projects, and that gets me on set. And I managed to do, or not managed to, but I got to do wardrobe for the first time on this project called Savage Lands, which you will see sometime in the future.
Let me ask you this. Do you have any way that we can keep up with your career, like a website or social media, something like that, so we can follow you?
I am rebuilding my website at the moment. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram or maybe even Tumblr, I don't remember. But at Claire, CLAIREK Brooks, BROOKS.
Got it. Shameless plug.
For everything.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Claire. I will get out of your hair. And thanks for answering my questions. And thanks for doing the scene. Right?
It was fun. It was weird and bizarre and fun all at the same time.
That's what we're looking for. So in the future, I will contact you again, and paid gigs are coming your way. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, good luck with all of your endeavors as well.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Bye.